Let's talk about housing now. There is some concern about all of these foreclosures and all of these the higher rents, and of course the lack of affordable housing, and the fact that there's no pandemic assistance anymore for these individuals, and landlords now have the right to go ahead forward with eviction process, right? Well, we're getting some new data about just how bad things are for people, and really pointing to these numbers on the amount of people that are now moving into mobile homes. So, this used to be the thing that, well, you can't live in a mobile home, right? It's gonna, you can't do that. Well, now, according to this data, beggars can't be choosers, according to the RT. The ugly reality of the U.S. housing market is that these are up now 22%. Manufactured home sales house some 22 million Americans, according to the Manufactured Housing Institute. But apparently, they've been buying up stakes in these trailer parks. So Wall Street is now swooping in and is buying up stakes in these mobile home parks. So as if it wasn't bad enough that Wall Street already had their hands in buying up single-family homes. Now they're buying up these mobile home parks and running up rents.
I mean, is this like sexy kind that you see in Travel Magazine?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I mean, no. What is a sexy kind of mobile home?
You know, the kind where you see a full page spread where it's like a couple in the sunset kicking their heels up and it's nice.
Those are tiny homes.
Oh, yeah, tiny homes.
Yeah, you're thinking of tiny homes. Yeah.
And mobile homes. I mean, this is not a gentrification of the market, right, is the kind of comical point I'm trying to make. It's not like, oh, this is cool now. We do this now for the environment. We do this because this is like actually, in fact, the market, according to a motor research firm, says that the mobile home market will grow to $115 billion by 2025. Which is double what it was in 2019. So more people are, in fact, and I know I've mentioned this book before, Evicted. They do talk about these mobile home parks, and the standard of living there is really terrible, and how a lot of times the governments, the local municipalities put a lot of pressure on the landlords, but then the landlords pass that pressure down to their tenants, and it ends up like being a squeeze for the tenants and not the landlords. Things don't get fixed. It's awful. If you're interested in knowing exactly what that lifestyle is like, I do suggest that book. It's called Evicted. It's an anthropology of people who live in rental homes and how hard it is both for landlords and tenants, but not the government. Government makes out.
Well, and the problem I have with this whole thing, of course, is that these prices are, as the Financial Times reports, now that U.S. private equity, like Blackstone and others, are seeing the huge upside of owning these mobile home parks. So they move in now and rents go up,
Yes.
And I mean, these are all the problem is that they're not making any new mobile home parks. So if people are priced out of homes, cities and counties and states have said no to mobile home parks. Very rare. Like if we invest in real estate, but building new mobile home park communities is not allowed in almost every community now. Like the ones that exist are sort of grandfathered in and people buy them up and can trade them, but they're not building new ones. It's very, very rare that an area has a new mobile home park that's actually built. So as a result of that, Blackstone and these other private equity funds can come in and swoop up the finite amount of these that are still existent, run up the rents, do all of these things, consolidate them under their Blackstone hedge fund.
Yeah.
And the problem with these large hedge funds is they don't know how to manage these properties.
Exactly. And so a lot of times in these mobile home parks, most people run behind in their rent and they end up sort of getting evicted and then moving in with a neighbor. And there's a lot of these sort of households put together with people who are not related, not married, not, related in any way, because they're all on hard times and trying to share the responsibility of life. And then when a conglomerate comes and buys up that motorhome park, they don't know that someone maybe was catching up their rent with the previous manager, or someone had a deal with the previous manager to say, collect rents, or do a lot of times what they do is they make an arrangement to do some repairs on the mobile home park, and the manager will give them a credit if they are so far behind in their rent. But the corporate office doesn't know that, does not abide by that, and then you get a turnover of evictions, and the higher the turnover, the lower the profitability is, and the fewer then repairs that happen to those parks. So it really is like a virtuous circle of decline.
Hope in our chat, Hope Platt says the owners in their park area keep up the homes and the grounds constantly. We're not owned by Blackstone, thank God. Again, that's the issue, right? Is that they to me, and I've seen this, we've watched this happen with these big, these Wall Street hedge funds that buy up 1,000 properties in Tampa or these other places, and then they try to run their property management out of like Chicago or something. So all these tenants that live in these properties 5, 6, 7 states away need a toilet fixed at 2 a.m. They're going to call some random phone number in Chicago. Now, meanwhile, that tenant is getting screwed.
Yes.
Because they're trying to consolidate this power under this one property management consortium, in Chicago somewhere. And I'm not making this up. This is exactly what happened. And this is exactly what happened in Tampa. And so you had people living in these homes and they didn't even know who their property manager was. So, they're like, hey, I've got a problem here. I've got a leak. Who do I call? I don't know anymore because some Wall Street firm owns me. In America, trailer parks are fragmented. As they say in the Financial Times, these are mom and pop businesses, making them ripe targets for consolidation. They're also shorthand for poor. Most people who live in them are part of households earning less than $50,000 a year. Some 22 million individuals live in trailer parks, roughly 1 in 15 Americans. And most own their trailers, but of course you don't you rent the land underneath you. And then when this hedge fund wants to raise the rent on the land, you have no choice because there's no other mobile home park for you to move your house to.
And they don't move as easily as all that. And they say mobile, but it's not.
It's not really mobile.
And for someone who's down on their luck, it's very expensive then to just move somewhere else. And a lot of times they rent the trailer as well as the space. So it's not as easy as all that. You would think, though, that some like gentrified, business model might have addressed this. Like during the pandemic, we saw business models that were taking abandoned hotels and turning them into housing, low income or housing for homeless people. But that hasn't seemed to be the case. And another problem of this is that if someone says, well, I could live here and call it a day, right? Mobile homes depreciate in a way that actual stable or planted in the ground housing does not.
Well, they are considered vehicles, right?
Yes.
It's considered a motor vehicle. And so, yes, they you don't get the same tax benefits that you get from owning actual real estate. It's technically a vehicle. So you're right. It depreciates instead of appreciates the way that a normal house would. So again, this is what's happening. This is the state of affairs. I'm just surprised we really haven't heard much, if anything, or any discussion talking about the eviction crisis in the mainstream media. We've been focusing on it here as we have new data about it. We talk about it here, but this is not something I see on any of the major media television channels. I don't see MSNBC talking about it, which is supposed to be the voice of the people, CNN. Right. I don't see any of them talking about it.
Well, maybe it hasn't actually hit yet, or maybe it never was going to be the thing they worried about.
I'd be curious how many, let's see if it's hit. How many people here in our chat have had some sort of a rental issue, whether it's like rent going up, foreclosure, or you're behind on rent, or some issue related to housing? We've got thousands of people watching right now, just as a sampling. Just drop it in the chat right now. Just drop it in our comments. Do you know someone, or are you personally affected in some way by housing? Because I think sometimes they do these polls, they get like 200 people on a poll.
But even if you were to file an eviction as a landlord, it takes months in some cases. You have to settle a trial date, then you come up with some kind of like, will they make up the rent? Will they not? It's not as easy as all of that. Well, then, and also, but on the tenant side, like who's going to, tenant has to afford a lawyer to pay a lawyer to, or they have to show up, and whether they do or not, that's not for certain. They will get notices that they're being evicted, but they never exactly know when that will happen in some cases, in a lot of cases, actually.
Joanne Morgan says, my landlord made me month to month all of a sudden, and now he's kicking me out because he knows he can raise the rent $500 to $600.
Oh, that's terrible.
That, literally the first person in our chat, like boom, right there already an experience,